participating in solidarity with one another at the table today are various faith and ethnic groups, all of whom stand united in the pursuit of justice and human rights for the Palestinian people. They are as follows. I am Brian McIntosh, speaking on behalf of the Holy Land Awareness and Action Task Group of Southwest Presbytery within the United Church of Canada. And to my immediate left is Judith Deutsch, who is a member of the Toronto chapter of Independent Jewish Voices. To my far left is Khaled Moumar, who is the current president of the Canadian Arab Federation. To my immediate right is Lynn Adamson, who's speaking on behalf of the Peace and Social Action Committee of Toronto Friends Meeting, which is the Quakers. And to my far right is Mohammed Shoker, who is from the group Muslim Unity based here in Toronto. The United Church of Canada has shown a great deal of solidarity with the Palestinian people, approving resolutions at consecutive general councils in 2003, 2006, and 2009, which show a growing resolve to seek and advocate for human rights for the Palestinian people and a just peace in the land our various faith groups call holy. As the Church has progressed in its policy base, we have developed a growing set of solidarity relationships with the organizations represented at this table today, and with other church organizations that have shown a similar resolve to speak and to act. At the same time, our Holy Land group, a body that is regionally based in our structure, but works within a national network, has been a leader in seeking to educate United Church people and the general public, and advocate for the upholding of Canadian values such as justice and peace, reconciliation and right relationships, tolerance and diversity in community, and the upholding of international law with regard to the human rights of the suffering Palestinian population in the occupied territories and beyond. We are therefore alarmed by a series of decisions made and events perpetrated by the Stephen Harper government in recent months, which betray a clear, if unspoken, agenda to refrain from any criticism of Israel's violation of international law regarding rights for Palestinians, and a politicizing of the Canadian cultural landscape away from the upholding of those rights and toward the vilification of any who advocate for those rights. It is in this dangerous and anti-democratic context of ideological intention to criminalize criticism of Israel as anti-Semitic that we have called these groups together to hold this news conference today. We first of all want to state unequivocally that we are in favor of the right of Israel to exist, and would denounce any who would seek to deny Israel that right. We agree with any and all efforts to root out and expose all real and dangerous forms of anti-Semitism, which seeks the intentional suffering, death, or destruction of Jews, Judaism, or Israel. We know only too well the blight of the legacy of Holocaust denial, for instance, that occurs in Canada and elsewhere, and the rhetoric of destruction of Jews that emanates from the lips of some both here in Canada and abroad. The Holocaust has in fact cast a large shadow over the Christian community for decades, creating a legacy of guilt regarding the Jewish community and the nation of Israel that has silenced conversation regarding Palestinian human rights. An inability that, in our opinion, to be unable to speak the truth that we see and know in the Holy Land with regard to the upholding of Palestinian rights. This is an inability that, in our opinion, creates a new collective shame within the Christian community. It's also important to say that we are critical of and reject outright people who perpetrate suicide bombings from whichever side of the conflict as a means of expressing political opinions, because too many innocent people are either threatened or killed by such actions and tactics. So in this regard, we stand with brother and sister Christians and with other groups, including Palestinian Christians and Canadian Christians of various persuasions, in embracing nonviolent methods of political, social, and cultural transformation. However, we are here today to flatly reject the claim or charge, implied or explicit, that criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. For Israel exists in the international community of nations with obligations and responsibilities, just as Canada or any other member of the United Nations does, and criticism of Canadian government policy from citizens of Canada or abroad does not and ought not to imply that Canada should be wiped off the map of the international community. Similarly, neither should criticism of Israel's policies vis-à-vis the Palestinians in any way be construed as advocating for the destruction of either Israel or the Jewish people. Prominent people who are, in our opinion, above reproach, namely Desmond Tutu and Jimmy Carter, to mention only two, have spoken clearly and strongly of the plight of the Palestinians as the new apartheid, using strong language to draw attention to the violent suppression of human rights in the occupied territories, which Richard Falk has called the largest open-air prison in the world. And the United Nations has consistently voted to call upon Israel to live up to the international community's obligations regarding the upholding of human rights. Democracy, in our opinion, actually depends on healthy internal debate and even dissent, as the voice of the people needs to be discerned and determined on issues in which conflict clearly exists. And debate regarding Israeli policy toward the Palestinians in an atmosphere of truth-telling, civility, and respect ought to be encouraged rather than discouraged in both Israel and in Canada. Yet, the Canadian government seeks to stifle such debate and has sought to do so through the following actions and others, all of which we express strong concern today about. The Canadian International Development Agency, CIDA, abruptly defunded the interchurch coalition Kairos Canada, the Canadian Arab Federation, and others late last year. At first, no reason for the Kairos cuts, other than the vague line about no longer falling in line with CIDA priorities, was given. But then Jason Kenney appeared at a conference on anti-Semitism in Jerusalem in mid-December and explicitly stated that Kairos was cut because they advocated a boycott of Israel and were therefore anti-Semitic. This claim, inaccurate, malicious, and dangerous, created a stir which did dissipate over the Christmas period. But its outright falsity has not been given adequate attention by the media or by the Canadian public, though many in civil society and in interfaith communities in partnership with Kairos spoke out against the cuts.